So can you give me a quick biography of yourself?
Sure, I'd be glad to. My name is Rex Whitcomb. I'm 63 years old. I moved to Folly Beach in 1952 and have lived here continuously ever since. Went to Catholic schools, Baptist College, which is now Charleston Southern University, and was an educator for more than 38 years in South Carolina. I have 2 children and 2 grandchildren.
So how was it like in grade school? Was it integrated? Was it segregated? How was that for you?
I went to a segregated Catholic elementary school. I finished the 8th grade in 1962 and left there and went to Bishop England High School. And when I went to Bishop England High School, that coincided with when Bishop England integrated. And I remember 2 students joining our class that year, Arthur McFarland, the judge downtown, being one of them. And he was on the basketball team too, pretty good. So that was my first introduction to integration as a movement. But my experiences as a young person were limited with black people because it was a segregated society. I did, however, have an opportunity because I worked every summer. I worked in the Folly Beach Bowling Alley and in the parking lots behind what is now the restaurant and surf shop. I used to work with the black kids from James Island there. I was many times off and on with the white kid working in that group. So I got to know quite a few of them quite well, whereas had it not been for that job, I would not have been interacting with hardly any black people. Because in those days, it wasn't a conscious decision to segregate myself from the blacks, but that's the way society was structured, and that's how, you went to church. You went to a church with a bunch of white people or black people, depending on who you are.
If I'm going back a bit, so during the Orangeburg Massacre, I don't want you to talk about the Orangeburg Massacre, but were there anything similar to the Orangeburg Massacre that happened on Folly?
I don't know anything similar that I was personally aware of. I know very little about that particular incident. I remember hearing about it. My first-hand experiences were, of course, Bishop England High School was on Calhoun Street at that time. And we often firsthand saw the hospital workers strike, which was really big national news at the time. So I was witness to that, mostly just as an observer, all as an observer. And the only other instance I can recall was when there was a large number of black people came to Folly Beach and marched the length of the beach, because the beach had been segregated also. I never remember seeing any signs that said no blacks allowed, but black people did not go to the beach, and I presume it was because they were told they couldn't. But I do remember one occasion specifically where a very large number of people came out and marched the length of the beach. And I think it was mostly uneventful. I think they gathered some gawkers, and there might have been some words thrown back and forth, but there was no violence or anything like that in either instance.
So what was pretty much the difference between when you were teaching and when you were in elementary school or Bishop England or whatever?
Well, I told you earlier I went to a segregated elementary school, a Catholic school, and then when I got to Bishop England, they had integrated with very little, personal interaction on my part as a child with black people. I got to college, and there were some black people at the Baptist College, which is now Charleston Southern. But when I started teaching, I had my first teaching job was on Young's Island. And it was in the first years of integration, the first year of integration, 69, 70. And as you can guess, tensions were high. People were concerned that the merger of the student populations, because black children had previously gone to all black schools, and the white kids were in all white schools. But they came, from my observation, they came together rather well. This was at a middle school, 6th, 7th, 8th grade school where I was teaching physical education. And I had no problem. But it was a rural school. I believed, even at the time, that all these kids really knew each other from the community anyway. So merging them at school wasn't that difficult. I think they had a harder time in some of the urban schools. But I bore witness to some of that as well. I was a school administrator at North Charleston High School when they merged North Charleston High School, which had long been a traditionally white school, although it was already integrated, and Bonds Wilson, which had long been a traditional black school. I was an administrator at North Charleston High when they merged those two schools. But we had a black principal who was extremely strong and competent, and he did an excellent job. So I saw that merger. Although both schools had already been integrated, they had not been merged together into one school. So it was seen as a challenge.
So tell me about your neighborhood. Were there any black kids in your neighborhood, black families?
Well, as I mentioned to you, I grew up on Folly Beach. So Folly Beach was segregated. Again, I don't recall that there was any law that said black people could not live on Folly Beach, but I'm pretty sure that it was an understanding that they didn't do that, and that just across the river at Solid Degree was the closest black community. Before that, no, would not use the same restroom, nor drink from the same water fountain. This was before Folly Road was widened, and it was just a two-lane road most of the way into town. My friends, you know, Mr. Mike and Mr. Ralph, and all of them went to segregated high schools also. When they were in high school, public schools weren't really integrated yet. Maybe their last year, maybe even your dad. Where did your dad go to high school? James Allen High?
Like, did you have any, thoughts about one of your neighbors who you thought probably ate cats? Because, she had a cat one day and then it was gone the next, and you never saw the cat. You never saw her leave her house. And
no,
you just think that she, ate her
I didn't
cat.
know anybody like that. And we did, though, have our share of eccentric people. Folly Beach is kind of a place for different sorts of people to start with. But I don't remember anybody like that. I mean, we knew people that had, animals, I guess. Back then, dogs ran free. People had chickens. I remember the lady next door to us had chickens, and I remember at least once, I'm sure I was smart enough not to do it again, but I got some chicken eggs from the lady next door and put them in my pants pocket. And by the time I got home, it was a total mess. But I don't, I can't to say that I know anybody like that. I can't say I did. But when you're kids, you talk about rumors and things.
So, did you have any housemaids when you were a child or anything like that?
Actually, I almost forgot to mention this. When my mother was an RN, a nurse, and she worked pretty long days. And my father, a Boilermaker, often had to travel for work. So mother and father had hired a woman that lived on Sol Legree. Her name was Daisy. She would come 3 times a week, and she would watch me after school, do mother's ironing, and do some light housekeeping. And that went on for a number of years. I have fond memories of her, and I don't have no idea how she was paid or what she was paid, but it seemed like the relationship was good. I had a good relationship with her. And but as far as how many other people had anything like that, I don't know. I think maybe my mother, being a working woman, which was not as common back then, this is 1950s, wasn't that common for women to be working. And I think that was the reason why we had, and we called her a maid, but I don't know, she was kind of half babysitter, half maid, that kind of thing.